Welcome to Greek for a Week. I'm glad that you have decided to view this week's video. And this week we are going to be looking at the last couple of verses for Paul's Thanksgiving, and that would be verses 9 through 11. And we're going to go ahead and diagram and see how those verses fit together. Let me point out a few things as we move forward. This is Paul's prayer begins right here in verse 9. Then you have a hina of content, which would be the content of Paul's prayer. And then as you work your way down through in verse 10, you have a purpose, eis ta plus the infinitive. You also have another purpose with another hina clause in verse 10. Ultimately, you could say the content verse 10 then spills out into verse 11 with a participle of result. So we'll see how that looks in a grammatical and syntactical construction on the next slide. So verses 9 through 11, we're going to go ahead and diagram those. So verse 9, he begins and, which that chi there is probably resumptive, which just simply means that it's resuming the thought that was communicated in verses 3 through 8. If you recall, Paul used the verb there, eucharisteo, I give thanks. So that comes down then into verses 9 through 11. So, and this I pray. All right, so what is the this? You could say it that way. So here's your hina of content. So Paul prays that the Philippians' love may abound, and that it would abound yet more and more. You could say the means by which he wants this love to abound is in, there's our means, in knowledge and all discernment. So these are the means by which the love then would abound. If we move forward, verse 10 now, here's our purpose. Eis ta plus the infinitive. The infinitive would be to approve the things that are excellent. So he's praying that, right, the content is that their love would abound. The purpose of his prayer is that they would be able to approve the things that are excellent. Another purpose clause. Now this is just hina, all right, where the preceding clause was eis ta plus the infinitive. This is that they may be sincere and blameless. So there's, you could say maybe a thinking aspect here. They'd be able to approve the things that are excellent. And then you could say action here, that they would be sincere and blameless in their life, in the way that they conduct themselves in the day of Christ. Then verse 11, the being filled there, the pepleromenoi, that would be a participle of result. So I'm suggesting here that this character then results in a life that's filled with the fruit of righteousness. And that comes, how does that life come, or how does the result of being filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through, or the agent by which that comes through, is Jesus Christ, with the goal that would ultimately be to the glory and the praise of God. Okay, so here we're going to see in the next slide, as I typically do, you're going to see a preaching or a teaching outline. What might these verses look like as I move forward to teach them? Well, again, Paul's thanksgiving here, verses 9 through 11. Paul's thanksgiving. So Paul prays. We know that's the really the main point of the text is that Paul is praying. The content then of what he is praying is found in verse 9, that the love would abound more and more. And how, you could say, through what means will this love abound more and more? Through relationships and through a discerning application of that love in all relationships. So again, here's your main point. Paul prays. The content would be a subpoint. The purpose of his prayer would be a subpoint. And that purpose is the Philippians would make proper assessments through a life that's in Christ. The Philippians would also be without hidden motives and without stumbling. And then that kind of life here, what does that result in? That results in a life that's filled with righteousness. That is brought through the agency of Jesus Christ or a relationship with Christ, and it also ultimately glorifies and praises God. So one main point, Paul prays. Two subpoints, the content of his prayer, and then the purpose of his prayer with a result clause in verse 11. So there's verses 9 through 11. I plan to do my best to put verses 3 through 11 in a diagram next week. So have a great week.